Well, it's Friday, and that means questions and answer time. A lot of you have been asking me a lot of questions lately. Been making a lot of videos helping you guys make the transition from winter into spring, and so it's generated a lot of questions. Let's jump right into it to help you guys out today. Dandelions come in around May here in Colorado. What do you recommend to build brood before they come into bloom? I always recommend feeding 1-to-1 sugar water like I've shown in the video this week. If the temperatures are above 50 degrees Fahrenheit, that's going to be a big push to give your bees something that they can consume and help them get rolling before the dandelions show up. I always backdate 42 days from when dandelions first bloom, as a guess, and then I start feeding 1-to-1 sugar water with my feeding additives. And that way it gives all of my foragers time to become foragers. And so they'll be ready for spring nectar flows. Next question, you mentioned you love your queen. What type is she? Italian, Russian, Caucasian, Carniolan? Thank you. I'll answer that, but before I do, let me tell you this. Live stream every Thursday night, 7 o'clock Central Time. It's so fun. I hope you guys can join me. We have a great time where I teach you guys something about bees, and then also have a time of question and answers, and we always have giveaways. My queens are my queens. I raise my own queens, so I don't really worry about what kind of ancestry they have. I just go for the hives that have the best results, the hives that are doing the best, overwintered well, controlling mites themselves, and aren't showing any signs of pests and diseases out of the ordinary. They produce a lot of honey. All of those criteria is general to work. And so from those hives, I graft and I just keep those good genetics going. So I'm not too concerned about getting a certain ancestry line in there. Now, before we get into the next question, let me remind you, Bobblehead David is here to say, please subscribe to my channel. It's so important that you guys do subscribe because it helps my videos so much. But what really helps my videos is for you to give me a thumbs up and to leave a comment. Now, I'd love for you to leave a comment. Let me know what your experience is like right now, where you live, what the temperatures are, how your hives are doing. Just check in and leave a comment. Love to hear how it's going for you. Now let's get back to the questions. My main concern is feeding pollen during the winter. Am I wrong that doing so can cause dysentery in honeybees? I made a video recently showing some of my hives, at least one in particular, where we looked into it, took the winter bee kind off. They've had 5 or 6 winter bee kinds with a lot of pollen in it. Plus, I feed pollen out in the open, and on warm, nice days in the wintertime, when bees are flying, I put pollen substitute, Ultra Bee protein substitute out and on a board or a carpet or something. Boom, the bees are on it, hauling that stuff back into their hive. And no, I'm not, you can watch the video. I don't see any signs of dysentery. I know a lot of people say that, but no, this time of the year, it's not a big issue for me. If overnight temps go below freezing, won't your jars with the sugar water freeze and or break? A lot of people are concerned that the jars are going to either heat up or cool down, expand, contract, and the sugar water is just going to pour out of it. Maybe it will, but I do this every year for over a decade and I don't have those problems. The bees seem to be, my hives are large enough where if it does leak out kind of fast, which I've never seen it do, the bees are consuming it and using it pretty good. David, does a lot of bees mean early swarms? And what if you don't want to grow your apiary? Wouldn't a slower buildup be more advantageous? I made a video on if you don't want to grow your apiary, what do? I've got a column coming out, an article coming out in Bee Culture magazine about just this very thing. Some people just don't want to grow their apiary. So if you don't want these early swarms or a lot of bees coming out of winter, then yeah, you can feed your bees less. And that's one of the things that I've done on a few of my hives because I don't really need as many bees as I thought. So I haven't been feeding them as many winter bee kinds. And so they're not as nearly populated as some of the ones I've been showing on my video. But feeding them makes them grow. So think of it that way. David, should I split before spring nectar flow or after? I want as much spring honey as I can get. If you want spring honey, don't split. Keep your hive together, use the Damari method, something that can keep your hive together, but avoid a swarm. I've made a video on how you can easily use the Damari method. I'll leave a link in the description below to that video. So I think that would be your best bet. Don't split if you want honey. Splitting your bees now will give you more honey next year because you'll have more hives that you won't split next year. But splitting them next year could reduce the size of both your split and your parent hive, and they may not have time to get all that honey brought in. Good question. One winter bee kind a week and starting when? Can we assume first week of December? So on average, about 3 months or 12 to 15 winter bee kinds per colony. I can't do that since I'm snowed out from accessing my hive too often. When is it when it's over a foot deep? So yeah, good question. Some of you are wondering how many winter bee kinds I feed my bees during the wintertime. Again, if I'm trying to grow population, to help me make nucleuses and queens in the wintertime, or build up so I can have a lot of bees in the spring to make nukes and queens, then I feed my bees one winter bee kind about, I wouldn't say once a week. I would say probably more like every 10 to 14 days is how much they consume. And certainly that is going to make a lot of bees. If you don't want a lot of bees, you could feed them a little bit less, one a month or whatever. But I just keep putting them on there so I can get more and more bees. But my situation probably is different than yours. Hey, David, really enjoyed this video, the one about inspecting my hive coming out of winter. If you don't mind, how are you going to manage this hive to keep it from swarming? Also, what is your breed of bees? Okay, just answered the breed of bees and also answered how, in my live stream, I answered how I prevent swarming. I make a split. I go out there when I see mature drones and dandelions, and I will pull out about 5 frames, 2 or 3 frames of brood and resources, and another frame of honey, and another frame that's just drone foundation, and boom, I've got a split. I take the mother queen with me so the parent hive can't swarm, and they're going to regroup, and in about 30 to 45 days, I'm going to have to do it again at the parent hive because I have a new queen they'll want to swarm again. So I can usually make several splits from one colony. Great tour after winter. Curious, why no mite count check since this is the first inspection? Because it's too early for me. If the temperatures get cold, I don't want to do any kind of mite checks in case I have more issues with the mite check. For example, if I accidentally kill my queen in the alcohol wash, I know I would never do that, but never say never. Then I'm in a bind because I can't get a queen. I can't raise my own queens this early in the year, see? So I'm going to wait a little bit until I start doing my mite checks. But it makes sense. It won't make any difference to me because you saw that I think I had 11 or 12 frames of brood in there. So the possibility of mites being pretty high is probably going to be a real thing. And so if I wait another 2 to 4 weeks before I do a mite check, it's not going to change things drastically for me. It's going to give me time to get those mites under control. But that is a good question. Hey, David, really liked the video. Awesome tips and great hive. When will you put a queen excluder back on it, and at what level to put it in? Yeah, I don't usually use queen excluders. Now, in this case, the queen had laid up in the top super, but now we looked for her in the video and she was down in the top deep. So I will just continue to lift her up, pick her up with my fingers, move her back in the bottom, let her start laying down there. And then meanwhile, the bees will emerge out of the super and the foragers will start bringing nectar in. So I just kind of manage the location of my queen. There are times I do use the queen excluder, but this case, I might, just can't decide. It's too cold right now to do that. Still too, we're going to have temperatures below freezing in just a few days. I had a hive die or abscond and left me with a ton of honey that I froze. What's the best way to thaw it out without getting the condensation in the honey, or would that happen anyway? The rest of the hives did good, but nothing like yours. I'll have to try it. Thanks for the video. If you freeze honey and you take it out of the freezer and let it thaw, condensation will develop on the outside edge of the honey. I do that quite often. I don't worry about it. If you're giving it to a hive, they will use that moisture and consume the moisture and be glad to get it. And if you're doing it, you can just leave it out in a dry room and let that evaporate or wipe it off with a paper towel. I wouldn't give it too much thought. What do you do when it gets cold again in a week? I'm making a video tomorrow about that, actually, and because it's going to do that. So I'll stay tuned for that video. How cold does it have to be to use your candy board? Anytime the bees are not flying. So when they're flying, I'm feeding liquid. When they're not flying, I'm feeding them a candy board. Do you worry about early swarming? Everybody worries about early swarming. And in the early days of inventing and creating the winter bee kind, I was putting way too much protein in there, building up way too many bees, and they were swarming in late winter before I had a chance to do anything about it. I think I've got the recipe dialed down now where it's certainly manageable. Has anyone purchased a queen So when a split is done, you do not have to wait for a queen to be raised. I would assume this would be a benefit since there would be little delay in hive production. Okay, so good question. You're making a split from a parent hive that overwintered, and instead of letting this split raise their own queen, which I don't do, I take the mother queen out of the parent hive. But let's say you're going to let the split raise their own queen. Yes, if you bought a mated queen and put in there, it would speed it up. You would probably be able to have eggs being laid in a week, whereas now you're going to wait 4 weeks. So it would help. But in my situation, I can't raise my queens that early and to put in there when I make my splits. So I go ahead and let them raise it while I'm raising my own queens. If that makes any sense. It's all about maybe where you live and if you can get mated queens that early when you do your splits. That's a good question though. Thank you. Love the gloves. What are they, please? Oh, referring to my yellow gloves that I wear in some of my videos. They're orange or yellow gloves. They're chemical proof gloves. I wouldn't say they're sting proof, but my opinion and experience is that I've never been stung through them because of the thickness of the rubber. I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested in these yellow gloves that sometimes you see me wear. All right, next question. How do you store drawn comb? I've made a lot of videos on storing drawn comb. I made a real extensive video about it, and I showed how you shouldn't store them in your basement where it's humid, that you shouldn't store them in a place where there could be bugs and wax moths or ants getting to them. So you really have to think about what is comfortable for you. A nice climate-controlled room that's not real hot, not real humid, not real moist, but you store them in that room and you let them have air. Don't put them in a bag. That's going to make them mold and mildew. Another comment says, couldn't you just weigh the bees and know how many there are, at least more accurately than a half a cup equals 300? Oh boy, weighing bees like you're recommending there, I think that would be very labor intense. You'd have to, buy I don't have a nice scale that can measure down that small amount of measurement to weigh a bee. And it's not that critical. It's pretty darn close, pretty accurate the way we do it with the half cup scoop on some of the testers that we use. And also the weight of a bee will change based on what is in their honey crop. That can change significantly, actually. We found this out when we make our packages of bees up and we weigh 3 pounds of bees. We have to calibrate how much the bees are carrying into the hive that we're shaking into packages, because we want customers to get 3 pounds of bees, not 2 pounds of bees and 1 pound of nectar in their honey crop. So that can make a difference too. I don't really think that's something that I would be interested in, is weighing bees. Just easier to scoop up half a cup and there you got your 300. But being that accurate sometimes is probably overboard, I would think. Well, these are good questions that you guys asked me. And if you want to see the video that generated so many of these questions, it's called Beekeeping No Way, Beekeeping in the Winter, First Hive Inspection After Winter. Here it is. I'll see you guys over there.